Welcome to Chill Out. I'm Pam Chill, one of the hosts of these Highland Park Senior Producers. My program, Chill Out, is dealing with healthcare, numerous issues, and today's program is about the POA for health versus guardianship. And I'm pleased to have on my show once again, Terry Dreyer. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Pam.
And it's been, I think, about a year or almost a year.
I think
yes,
so.
And we always come up with different really important, timely topics. And just a little bit of background. You're a board-certified patient advocate, RN, and you're owner and CEO of Shore Patient Advocates. And you're also author of, I'm privileged to have the book, which you autographed, and I refer to it numerous times, is Patient Advocacy Matters.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, that's also your book. So tell me about what we're doing today is doing the POA for healthcare, which we should all have. I mean, no matter what our health condition is at any given time, one never knows. It's always a preventative, proactive measure to do that. So if you can just elaborate on what you do right now.
Well, sure. We get involved in discussions about power of attorney for healthcare or possible guardianship regularly because we see so many people that are getting older and don't have family close by to serve as power of attorney for healthcare. Everybody in our country over the age of 18 should have a power of attorney for healthcare. It's an important document that proactively assigns somebody to make your medical decisions for you should you become incapacitated. And of course, none of us know when that's going to happen. You can be 18 years old, get in a car accident, and if you're over 18 and your parents aren't assigned to be your POA for health, then technically the hospital doesn't have to share any information. But what we see all the time is people just keep putting it off. And very frequently we will take on a new client maybe in their 70s with some memory problems, and they've never executed a power of attorney for healthcare with their estate planning attorney. And some people just think, well, I'm not going to need it, or my husband can make my decisions for me. But it really always has to be in writing. And one of the first things people want to know when you go to the hospital when they're doing the admission paperwork is, who is your power of attorney for healthcare? Because accidents happen all the time. And if you're not conscious or you're incapacitated for any reason, the medical people really need to know who you want to make those decisions.
And what happens if a person, you said, is incapacitated, and who is making those decisions?
Well,
in lieu of a power of attorney designated?
In the hospital, if no one has been identified as being a power of attorney for healthcare, the staff in the hospital will go through a list of priorities. Maybe it's a close friend, maybe it's a relative.
Emergency contact.
Yes, and that person will sign a temporary paper saying that they'll be the surrogate decision maker for that person while they're in the hospital if they can't make their own decisions. But neither one of these forms go into effect while the patient, the person we're talking about, can still make all their own decisions. So if I go into the hospital with my husband and I have my full faculties, I still make all my own decisions unless I'm unconscious.
Okay. But what if you're impaired in a temporary state? You know, sedation or something happens, but it's not a permanent state of unconsciousness, but it's a mild impairment.
Well, that's true, and we saw that all the time when I worked in intensive care. We would have people on anesthetic agents while they were on the ventilator, and in those cases, you need a power of attorney for healthcare or a surrogate decision maker to be talking to the doctors every day and going through any kind of decisions that need to be made, or consents, because sometimes you'll be on a ventilator unconscious and the doctors say, oh, she's got to go back to surgery. Somebody's got to sign the consent.
Right, absolutely. And they have to have an understanding of, obviously, benefits versus risks in that case. Now, what's the difference between a guardian and a power of attorney for health care?
Okay, well, a guardian is assigned by the court, and probably about 90% of people that have a power of attorney for health care will not need to have a guardian for themselves. But what we see a lot of times in our practice is people start having memory problems, and eventually they lose the capacity, the legal capacity to make their own decisions. In a case like that, occasionally we come across people that have such advanced dementia that they really can't make their own decisions. So in a case like that where there's no family around, or the person is self-neglecting or being abused in some way by family or friends, then it's a responsibility for people that find out about it to call the Adult Protective Services or Catholic Charities in Lake County and have it investigated. And if they feel that that person needs a guardian, then they will go to court and request a temporary guardianship. And sometimes the temporary guardianship will last about 3 months, sometimes 6 months. But at some point, the goal is always that that person should not need a guardian. But if they have a mental condition or a cognitive impairment, that they need a permanent guardian to look over them and keep them safe, and perhaps sell their home or liquidate their assets so they have the funds available for long-term memory care, then that's what a guardian will do. And that's ordered by a judge. And it's almost always, in fact, probably 99% of the time, a psychiatrist has to evaluate the person and determine if they have capacity, and go back to the judge and say, yes, this person has lost their capacity or competence. Now, there's a difference between capacity and competence. Capacity means you have the ability to understand generally what's going on, but competence means that the person really cannot safely take care of themselves. And that's determined by the courts.
Okay. Can you elaborate and give us some examples of guardianship?
Well, sure. Guardianship sometimes can get a little bit messy. Recently, we had an interesting case where a young woman actually caused self-harm to herself, and because she and her husband were going through a divorce, it made it impossible for him to serve any longer as the power of attorney for health care. So in the interim, before the courts determine who will be her permanent guardian, I'm serving as her power of attorney for health care and making decisions jointly with her to get her the best possible treatment. But in her particular case, because she's caused self-harm on multiple times before, the courts will probably assign a guardian to look over her, make sure she's in a safe living environment, make sure she doesn't run out of her money. One of the main things that the courts are concerned about when people have a guardian is that the guardian should take care of that money very, very well, either a fiduciary organization like a bank, or the person who has the guardianship of the person is very careful with that money so they don't run out of it, or if there's a chance they may run out of it, they have to do a little advanced planning for Medicaid.
Okay. Now, there is a difference, obviously, between a medical power of attorney and a financial guardian who's handling all of the day-to-day business transactions, you know, everything that has to be paid, bills, you know, living arrangements.
Well, just like a power of attorney for health care, people can assign two different people, one to be power of attorney for their health and one to be power of attorney for their estate, to help with bill paying and disbursement of people's valuables when people die or they need to have them sold. And the same thing is with the courts. A plenary guardianship means that you are guardian of the person and the estate. But what happens often is that you'll have a bank handle the estate because there are very, very strict rules about how to keep accounting down to the penny of everything, because the care of the person is being taken care of by the guardian. So the guardian has to make sure they get good care and be very, very careful with the money so that the person does not outlive their resources.
Which I'm sure you've seen happen many times.
Many times.
Right, right. Okay. I did want to ask you, what if somebody doesn't have the funds for an attorney? Or to assign a POA.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, a power of attorney in an emergency situation, and we've had a few of those before. In an emergency situation, you can go to the government website, il.gov, and just type in power of attorney for health. Now, that does not have to be notarized, and it's legal and binding if the person should become incapacitated, but I never really advise people to do that to save money because it's not as durable and binding. There are a lot of special circumstances that attorneys have to go through. So anything I'm talking about today, just take with a grain of salt because I am not a lawyer. I've just learned this because we've had to help so many people navigate health and wealth issues. And you really can't talk about health in America without talking about money.
I know, the two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I realize that. So if somebody doesn't have a lot of funds and they do this, okay, so they can do a designation of power of attorney. Okay. And so walk me through the process then. Okay, it lasts for a little bit of time. It could be challenged as well, right? Correct.
It can be. So for a power of attorney, if you've assigned, say, your sister to be your power of attorney for health care, and you've assigned your brother to be power of attorney for your estate, his job is to guard your money and your belongings in your home and be very careful with that. And her job is to help you make medical decisions or make them on your behalf if you become incapacitated. So it's similar in the guardianship world. There's always a guardian of the estate and the person. So if people come to us and they say, well, I don't have anybody, there's nobody available. I never got married. I never had children. All my siblings have died. My parents have died. Then we will talk to them about going to their attorney and drawing up a power of attorney for health care. And we will serve.
That's where you come in. Right?
We will serve in that capacity if they have nobody else, or perhaps their only relative is in California, so we'll serve as number 2 power of attorney for health care and stay in touch with number 1. But we never do anything with people's money. We never touch that. We only will work on people's behalf because we feel like, having a nurse help you make decisions is better than a stranger assigned by the courts.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And if somebody does have to decide, having a major surgery or going on hospice, which obviously will, doctors decide, but also, people make that decision as well as relatives can. So who would be the ones to coordinate all that? Because if somebody does have a financial gain,
right, it can be a conflict of interest.
Right, absolutely.
So we serve at the client's behest. So if we are going to be a power of attorney for health care, we'll sit down and ask them all the end-of-life questions. We'll talk to them about their wishes, how they feel about burial, cremation, what religious practices, and whether or not they do want life support, and if so, what kind of life support, so that we know them just as well. And sometimes it's even better than their own family because nurses can explain what all those terms mean and make sure that people make a well-informed decision.
Absolutely. We were talking about attorneys, so what type of an attorney would you be looking for?
Great question. So to execute powers of attorney, you would want to talk to an elder law attorney or an estate planning attorney. Now people say, oh, I don't have enough money for an attorney, but it can save so much money in the long run, and it's a very well spent money, and not all of them are expensive too. So there are economical ways to execute a power of attorney for health care and power of attorney for estate and a living will, and just make sure that all of your wishes are made known.
Okay. Does somebody have to sign that they are going to abide by your wishes? Because one person can say, oh, okay, just say, an example. I want to be buried so-and-so. Or I want to be cryonic suspension, and I have the money to do that. And the power of attorney says, there's only so much in your estate. We can do cremation, and there's all that savings of money. Or it can go to the guardian. It can go to pay bills. I mean, who designates I know it's a financial person, but how can you have it stipulated exactly what you want to have done and have it carried out, right?
Well, that's where choosing your power of attorney
This
is
is
very important. So a lot of times in practice, I will tell you that when mom or dad are doing poorly in the intensive care unit at the hospital, families get very emotional and they're sorely tempted to not do what their parents said wanted to be done. So you really have to choose carefully. I always tell people, don't choose the oldest daughter, Miss Bossy Pants, because you think that she's the most aggressive. That's not always a good strategy. You want somebody that you know is emotionally strong enough to stand up for your wishes, and you want to make sure that people get along, because when mom and dad start failing, it's pretty sad sometimes what happens in families. That's why you need to sit down and have a very open discussion with all of your relatives, if you have relatives left, and say, I know that you probably don't agree with this, but I want to make sure that all of you know what my wishes are. And before I have you sign on the dotted line, I want you to look me in the eye and tell me that you're able to abide by my wishes, because you should never place that burden on a child that is unable emotionally to carry out your wishes. So choose carefully.
Yes, choose carefully, and who absolutely shouldn't become a POA for healthcare? People
that are emotionally fragile for whatever reason, or very aggressive or bossy, the kind of people that are going to offend
everyone in the hospital.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, it's her again. It's him again.
Because people think that the louder you yell in the hospital, the more you get your wishes carried out, and that's completely not true. Hospital staff are people too, and they can identify problem family members, and they start to avoid them. So you never want to offend people in the hospital that are taking care of your loved ones. You need to be really diplomatic, because they've got a really hard job today.
Yes, they do. So this is the venue that you're doing right now. So tell me exactly, how does your new organization work with this and interpret it?
Oh, okay. Well, our primary organization right now, our only one, is called Ensure Patient Advocates, and we're in the process now of setting up a secondary company that's going to be able to serve as guardians of persons, and also to be able to raise funds so that seniors that run out of all their money will have some backup to be able to help them. The courts see a large number of people all the time that don't have any family available, and they just kind of randomly assign guardians to that person. And I personally feel that nurses and social workers are really good advocates, and they will stand up and do what's right for the patient.
Absolutely.
And work closely with the legal system to protect their person, their estate, and everything else, and do what's right for that person.
And their dignity and respect their wishes.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Now, just going back to the guardian, what kind of load do they have? I mean, how many persons are they in charge of their estates, and can they be reached 24/7?
No.
If they go on vacation, who takes their place? You know, because emergencies happen, and that's life. So I was just wondering if that, as opposed to you, because I know you have so much availability upon, you know.
Well, that's true, and the advantage
Yeah.
of having a power of attorney for healthcare or a guardian that knows you very, very well, of course, is much higher. But we are a private pay model. When we start doing guardianship work, the money for our fees will be lowered, and it will also be very carefully administered by a bank, so that we help people's money last as long as possible. So people need protection in so many different ways today. We see signs of elder abuse, self-neglect, lack of cognitive ability to even go to the grocery store. We see a lot of sad things all the time, and I just feel that this is a social justice issue in our country right now. I think it was Hubert Humphrey that once said that the test of the moral fiber of a country is how we treat our children and how we treat our aged. And right now, I don't think the country is doing a very good job of how they treat their aged, because when money is down, services really get pulled back for older people, especially if they don't have family to advocate for them. So the new company will be a 501c3, and we will be able to do advocacy and guardianship for people, and initially the fees would come out of their estate.
Can you tell people how they would get in contact?
Oh, sure. Well, we don't have a new website for the new company yet, but just contact us through North Shore Patient Advocates website if they're interested in finding out more. But we're pulling it all together, and we just think it's the right thing to do to reach out to people of lower income. This last 8 years, it always breaks my heart when people call with really tough stories, and we can't take on any more pro bono cases than we do. So in the new company, we'll be able to help people of different income strata.
So you're feeling a huge void, and also in the medical profession too, I have to say that a lot of physicians, less and less, are taking Medicaid, Illini Care, all the different types of our state Medicaid.
Right.
And the wait is much longer. The patient load is much higher. So what's going to happen? I mean, there's just
I don't know.
Yes.
Illinois really has especially big challenges right now because of our finances. We're seeing really, Pam, in the community right now, if someone's not already on Medicaid, we're seeing that some nursing homes are refusing to take people because they know that if the application for Medicaid has just been put on, it takes between 9 and 12 months at least for Medicaid applications to be approved. So we're seeing a lot of suffering. We're seeing a lot of closed doors right now, and it's a real social justice issue. Like I said, something has to be done because the people that are taking care of these clients can't do any more. I know that your husband is such a kind man, and he continues to take people on Medicaid and Medicare, but a lot of doctors are saying, I just can't do it anymore because I lose money for every patient that I take that's on Medicaid, and they consider it charity. So it's tough, especially in Illinois right now.
It's a very, very long time until they get paid,
yeah.
if they do.
A year.
Yes, right.
So nursing homes can't take care of people for a year free. And when they do get money from Medicaid, it's such a small percentage of what Medicare pays for rehab that they really can't give good care. I was saying to somebody last week, I met somebody that has some legislator friends, and I said, one of these days I would love to take some legislators around to tour some of these facilities and show them what's going on with the seniors in our country and in Illinois right now. So I hope he'll take me up on that.
And the ratio of CNAs or nursing staff in a nursing home. I thought it was supposed to improve. The new legislation would make it obviously, more staffing.
Yeah. Well, a lot of things that are in law just don't always get followed in nursing homes, practically speaking, because it's just very low pay and tough conditions to work in a nursing home. So they do the best they can. My heart goes out to them. I just really hurt for the long hours that they're working with poor supplies and poor funding. It's tough.
Right, and it's difficult. It's a difficult situation all the way around. In America, though, we have a different role model than different countries do.
Yeah, we do.
And we don't treat our elderly with, I think, as much, respect and looking forward to do it in the home. I think we're just starting in the last few years to realize that there is a benefit of being in the home. We don't have to take them out of the home. Because it's, number one, cost, very costly to go to an outside, be it assisted living or nursing home, whether it's private pay. You have to, literally sell your home that's been entirely paid for, and then that lasts you, forever long, but may not last you as long as you live.
And it's interesting because when I sit down and talk to people about costs of staying at home versus going into a nursing home, the vast majority, 86% of people want to stay in their own home until they die. Sometimes that can be done, but it can be costly to do it safely. And people don't realize, but 24-hour care at home
it's tremendous.
by qualified certified nursing assistants is probably about the same, if not a little bit more, than nursing home care. So if people have the funds to be able to do that at home, it's great. It's more comfortable, and it's a real nice ratio to have one person just taking care of you and your husband, but not everybody can do that, unfortunately.
I know. It really is extremely expensive, the nursing care. And even the nursing care that, even if you have long-term insurance, it has to be a recognized caregiver.
Right.
Right. And now they started a lot of new laws as of July 1st to treat somebody with memory care and diagnosed dementia, that they have to have a lot of training to enable them to be able to treat them.
They do. And they made some changes a couple of years ago regarding labor laws in Illinois too, so that it's actually illegal to pay caregivers under the table.
Absolutely.
Right now. If you have a private caregiver in your home, you're bound legally to pay their taxes, give them insurance, and give them days off and things like that. We know it still happens, but because of all the heinous examples of labor trafficking that we saw a couple of years ago, all the laws have changed, and a lot of the home care companies have not been able to survive, and older people with limited income are really scrambling to find people that they can pay, that they won't have to pay the higher rates of the certified agencies, but they're operating on a very, very low profit margin, somewhere between 1% and 2%. So
especially
hard.
if you need 24-hour care, even if you have somebody come in 4 hours a day and do some lifting, some bathing, and medication, but if you have that 24/7,
it's hard.
Yeah, I know we've had people on, and it costs anywhere from about $80,000 to $120,000.
Yeah.
A year.
I believe that, and there's a huge shortage of not only nurses and doctors, but also right now the real critical shortage is of caregivers right now. So a lot of people are going into the caregiving business, but because of the increased taxes now in Cook County, and the agencies are having to pay them much higher rates, and they're all really struggling to survive.
Everybody is struggling, yeah. You do see a lot of the home health care agencies starting to fold.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So in our closing, we just have a minute or two left. So tell me, what other new venues and what do you have cooking on the table? I know you have a symposium, I think, coming up.
We do. It's called the International Conference on Patient Advocacy. And we're very excited after the last 3 years at Northwestern. This year, by popular demand, we're having it in the North Shore area of Chicago at the North Shore Senior Center. It will be October 3rd through the 5th, and we're going to have nationally known speakers talk about patient safety, just the whole psychosocial component of aging, and we just have fabulous speakers. We're super
I know. I've been
excited.
privileged enough to go there, I think, the last 2 out of the 3 years.
Yeah.
And I just came back with a mountain of contacts, of networking, and just things that you need to know. Well, thank you once again, Terry.
You're welcome.
For being on the program, and good luck in your new venture.
Okay.
And you always help a lot of people. You are definitely an advocate.
Thank you. Thanks
Yes,
so much, Pam.
Advocate and activist at the same time.
Yes.
So I thank you so much.
Okay.
And please let me know if I can help you in any way.
Okay.
All righty. Take care.
Okay,
Thank
thanks
you.
a lot,
Thanks
Pam.
for coming on the program.
Okay.